The vanishing. The conference hall of the Galactic Union floated in the void between stars, a massive structure built from crystallized neutron matter that had witnessed 10,000 years of peace. Inside its grand chamber, representatives from 47 species gathered for what should have been a routine session. But today, something was wrong. Commander Vexlar of the Saurian Dominion stood at the central podium, his scaled features tight with irritation. His people had ruled the Union's military forces for 3 millennia, and nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. Behind him, holographic displays flickered with empty star charts and unanswered communication requests. The human delegation has failed to respond for 72 standard cycles, he announced, his voice carrying through translation matrices that converted his words into 47 different languages simultaneously. All attempts to contact their diplomatic vessel have been unsuccessful. A rippling laugh echoed through the chamber. Ambassador Threllock, a gaseous being contained within a transparent sphere, pulsed with colors that indicated amusement. Perhaps they overslept, he suggested, his voice bubbling through his containment system. Humans require unconscious rest periods, do they not? Such a primitive biological limitation. Several other representatives made sounds of agreement. The Korthani delegate, a being resembling a floating collection of geometric crystals, chimed with harmonics that translated as condescension. They have been Union members for merely 140 years, barely a moment in galactic time. Perhaps they simply forgot to maintain their systems. Vexlar's tail swept behind him in agitation, a gesture his species used to show frustration. I dispatched reconnaissance vessels to verify their status, he continued, ignoring the dismissive comments. 20 ships across multiple sectors. All have returned with the same report. He paused, and the weight of his next words seemed to press down on the chamber. Earth is gone. The laughter died instantly. Silence filled the vast space, broken only by the gentle hum of life support systems and gravity generators. 47 species, some of whom had existed for millions of years, sat in stunned disbelief. Impossible, declared Matriarch Selene of the Luminar Collective, a being of pure energy barely contained in a humanoid form. Planets do not simply vanish. Your scouts are malfunctioning. 20 vessels, Vexlar repeated slowly. 20 independent scanning systems. All report identical findings. He activated the main holographic display and the chamber was filled with 3-dimensional images of the Sol system. Earth's moon remains, orbiting empty space. There is a perfect sphere of dispersed particles where Earth should be. Mars colonies are evacuated and sealed. Every human station has been powered down and abandoned. The images shifted, showing location after location. Empty space where a blue world should have spun. Silent habitats on the red planet. Space stations drifting dark and lifeless, their systems in hibernation mode. The asteroid mining operations humanity had built were deserted, their machinery carefully shut down and preserved. What of their other settlements? Asked Executor Dran, an insectoid being whose species prided themselves on logical thinking. Humans established colonies on 32 worlds across 23 star systems. Surely not all of them are empty. Vexlar's scales darkened to a deep purple, a color his species displayed only in times of extreme stress. Every single colony is abandoned. 6.8 billion humans, gone, vanished, over an 8-year period, and none of us noticed. That statement hung in the air like a death sentence. The Galactic Union, with all their advanced sensors, their intelligence networks spanning thousands of worlds, their superiority built on millennia of experience, had failed to notice an entire species evacuating their civilization. Ambassador Threllock's colors shifted from amusement to confusion, cycling through his species' entire emotional spectrum. That is impossible. The logistics alone would require thousands of vessels, enormous energy expenditures, coordination across multiple star systems. Such an undertaking could not go unnoticed. And yet they accomplished it, Vexlar said quietly. My analysts have been reviewing historical data, looking for signs we missed. The review took 8 hours. The Union's finest minds watched as their intelligence systems replayed years of data, searching for patterns they had ignored. Slowly, painfully, a picture emerged that made the ancient chamber feel suddenly cold. Industrial output from human worlds had increased by 63% over the past decade. The Union had assumed humans were simply becoming more productive, catching up to galactic standards. Energy consumption in human territories had spiked to levels that seemed wasteful. The Union had dismissed it as typical human inefficiency, evidence of their primitive technology. Civilian traffic between human worlds had become chaotic and unpredictable over the past 8 years. The Union had assumed humans were simply disorganized, lacking the sophisticated traffic control systems of older species. Every assumption had been catastrophically wrong. Humans had been moving, building, evacuating, and the Union had been too arrogant to see it. They had been building ships, thousands of them. They had been moving people, carefully and methodically. They had been preparing, and not a single species in the Union had noticed, because they were all too busy feeling superior. "There is one thing they left behind," Vexlar said, his voice barely above a whisper. The hologram shifted to show Earth's moon, Luna, with a small beacon transmitting from its surface. "It is heavily encrypted. Our best cryptographers are working to decode it." Matriarch Selene's form flickered with uncertainty. "This makes no sense. Why would humans abandon everything? They had peace here, protection, access to technology thousands of years beyond their own development. They had prosperity and safety." The Korathani delegates' crystals arranged themselves into a pattern that suggested deep thought. Perhaps we should review their communications from the past decade, their requests and reports. The archives told a story that made every being in the chamber feel a creeping sense of dread. 12 years ago, human scientists had detected anomalies in deep space beyond the galactic rim. They had called it unusual radiation patterns and requested Union science vessels to investigate. The Union Science Directorate had deemed it unnecessary, stating that humans lacked the experience to properly interpret deep space data. 10 years ago, humans had presented detailed findings about energy signatures moving through the space between galaxies. They had shown mathematical models, predictive algorithms, gravitational data. The Union's top scientists had called the data inconclusive and alarmist, suggesting that humans' violent history made them see threats where none existed. 8 years ago, humans had formally proposed joint military exercises to test readiness protocols for unknown threats. The Union Security Council had refused, stating that the galaxy had been at peace for 10,000 years, and such exercises were unnecessary and expensive. 6 years ago, humans had requested permission to establish emergency evacuation procedures and build refugee vessels just in case. The Union had filed the request in bureaucratic archives, considering it evidence of human paranoia. 4 years ago, Ambassador Sarah Chen had given a speech before the full Union Assembly. The recording played in the silent chamber, and 47 species watched a human woman stand at the same podium where Vexlar now stood. Chen had been calm, professional, and direct. "Members of the Galactic Union," she had said, her voice steady. "Humanity has detected something in the deep dark beyond the galaxy. Something vast, something moving. We do not know what it is, but every model we have created shows it heading toward our galaxy. We are asking, begging, for the Union to take this seriously, to investigate, to prepare." In the recording, Commander Vexlar's own voice could be heard responding with barely concealed condescension. "Ambassador Chen, humanity has been part of the galactic community for less than a century and a half. The Union has maintained peace and prosperity for 10,000 years. Perhaps your species' troubled history causes you to see dangers where none exist. We appreciate your concern, but we must respectfully decline to waste resources on unsubstantiated fears." Chen's expression in the recording had not changed, but something cold and calculating had flickered in her eyes. She had nodded once, thanked the Union for their time, and returned to her seat. That had been her last major address. After that, only routine trade discussions and minor diplomatic matters. Nothing to suggest that humanity was planning the greatest disappearance in known history. The recording ended. 47 species looked at each other and, for the first time in 10,000 years, uncertainty crept into their ancient confidence. "They warned us," Matriarch Selene said softly, her energy form dimming, "multiple times, and we called them paranoid children." "The encryption has been broken," announced a technician from the control station. "The beacon message is ready." Vexlar activated the display. The decoded message appeared in simple, clear text that every species could understand. "To the Galactic Union, we saw what you refused to see. We did what you refused to do. We tried to warn you. We tried to help you. You dismissed us as frightened children playing at civilization. So we chose survival." The reckoning. The chaos in the Galactic Union chamber lasted for 3 days. Representatives returned to their homeworlds carrying news that shattered 10,000 years of certainty. Within weeks, panic spread across the galaxy like a plague, touching every civilized world, every species that had grown comfortable in their ancient peace. The Sylvani Collective, a species of plant-based beings who had mastered biological engineering over millions of years, attempted to analyze human evacuation technology. Their finest engineers gathered in massive biodomes, studying every scrap of data humanity had left in shared archives. What they discovered made their root systems tremble with fear. "The ships humans built are beyond our capabilities," Senior Engineer Velrus reported to his planetary council, his leafy appendages drooping with despair. "They developed propulsion systems that we cannot replicate, wormhole generators that require manufacturing precision we do not possess. They spent decades building this technology, while we assumed they were struggling with basic faster-than-light travel." He displayed holographic schematics of human evacuation vessels, massive arc ships capable of carrying millions in suspended animation, smaller scout ships with engines that could tear holes in space-time itself, manufacturing stations that could construct these vessels at rates that seemed impossible for a species so young. "How long would it take us to build even one prototype?" a council member asked. Velrus's color shifted to the deep brown his species showed in times of grief. 15 to 20 years, and that is assuming we can solve the technical problems we do not yet understand. Humans built thousands of these ships. We can barely comprehend one." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out among different species. The Korathi Crystalline Collective discovered that their quantum computing networks had been built on mathematical frameworks humans had quietly contributed over the past century. The Luminary energy beings found that their power generation stations used efficiency algorithms developed by human engineers. The Mechanar, a species of cybernetic beings, realized that their latest AI systems contained core programming written by humans. Humanity had not just been members of the Galactic Union, they had been quietly essential to its function, woven into the infrastructure so thoroughly that their absence created cascading failures across dozens of critical systems. Commander Vexlar stood in the Union's military command center, watching disaster reports flood in from across their territory. His tactical displays showed a picture of civilizations in decline, systems failing, and something far worse approaching from the darkness between galaxies. "The first probe has returned from the coordinates humans provided. The data is disturbing." The May display filled with images from the probe's journey. It had traveled to the edge of the galaxy and beyond, to a region where stars grew sparse and the darkness between them stretched for light years. There it found a graveyard. 17 solar systems, all dead. Planets still orbited their stars, but there was no life, no cities, no orbital structures, no electromagnetic signals. The worlds had been stripped clean of everything organic and technological. Massive furrows scarred planetary surfaces as if something incomprehensibly large had dragged across them. Atmospheric analysis showed trace elements that matched no known natural process. The probe detected something before it retreated, something massive approaching through deep space. The readings matched human predictions exactly. Commander Vexlar watched the sensor data scroll past, energy signatures on a scale that dwarfed anything the Union had ever encountered, gravitational distortions that suggested objects the size of moons moving in coordinated swarms, heat signatures indicating biological processes operating on planetary scales. They called it the Devourer, he said quietly, remembering the human reports they had dismissed. An entity or collection of entities that consumes everything in its path, organic matter, technology, entire civilizations processed into raw materials to fuel its expansion. He turned to face his command staff, all of them watching the data with growing horror. Send a message across all Union channels, emergency priority. We need every species' best minds working on this. We need weapons, defenses, evacuation plans. We need everything we should have been building for the past decade while we ignored human warnings. The Union threw every resource they had at the problem. Scientists worked around the clock. Engineers pulled from archives every weapon design, every defensive system, every survival protocol developed over 10,000 years of peace. But peace had made them complacent, and complacency had made them weak. After 6 months of desperate effort, the reports were unanimous and terrifying. The Union's weapons were designed for fighting other civilizations, not for combating something that operated on such a massive scale. Their defensive systems were built to protect against fleets of ships, not against planetary-sized entities that could consume entire worlds. Their evacuation capabilities could move millions, not the trillions that would need to flee. Matriarch Celine stood before the Union Assembly, her energy form flickering with exhaustion. We have analyzed human evacuation patterns using what little data they left behind. We estimate they moved 6.8 billion individuals across 23 star systems to an unknown location, all within 8 years. Our best projections suggest the Union could evacuate perhaps 5% of our population in the same frame time. The chamber fell silent. The mathematics were brutal and undeniable. The Union consisted of 47 species across thousands of worlds, with a combined population exceeding 3 trillion souls. 5% meant that 95% would be left behind when the Devourer arrived. "We must contact humanity," Ambassador Thrillock said, his gaseous form churning with agitation. "We must make them understand the situation. Surely they would not abandon the galaxy to this threat." "We have been transmitting messages for 6 months," Vexlar replied. "Every frequency humans ever used, every protocol they established. We have sent probes toward the areas where we detected traces of their wormhole technology. All we receive is silence." Executor Dran's insectoid features clicked together in thought. Perhaps they cannot hear us, or perhaps they choose not to answer. "We must make them hear us," Matriarch Celine said firmly. "Broadcast on all channels, make it clear we acknowledge our errors, we acknowledge our arrogance, we plead for humanity to return, to help, to save us from the catastrophe they refused to prevent." And so the Galactic Union, rulers of the galaxy for 10,000 years, began to beg. Messages flooded outward from every major world, carried on every available frequency. They acknowledged their mistakes, they admitted their arrogance. They pleaded for humanity to return, to help, to save them from the catastrophe they refused to prevent. "Humanity, this is the Galactic Union. We were wrong. We acknowledge our failure to heed your warnings. We acknowledge your superior foresight and preparation. Please, we need your help. Our people are dying. Please respond." The messages repeated endlessly, day after day, week after week, and still there was only silence. Until there was not. 3 months after the first desperate pleas were sent, a response arrived, not on Union frequencies, but on an entirely new channel that required Union engineers days to even detect. The message appeared simultaneously on every major world, broadcast with such power that it could not be ignored or missed. The holographic image that appeared showed a human man in his middle years, wearing a simple uniform with no rank insignia or national markings. Behind him, through a massive viewport, stars glittered in unfamiliar configurations. He was somewhere beyond the galaxy itself.
I am Marcus Chen, son of Ambassador Sarah Chen. I speak for humanity's Exodus Council. We received your messages, all of them. He paused, and his expression hardened. For 12 years, my mother tried to warn you. She presented evidence, data, mathematical projections. She begged you to investigate, to prepare, to simply acknowledge that a threat existed. You called her paranoid. You called humanity children. You dismissed us as primitives playing at civilization. The holographic image shifted, showing massive structures under construction in the darkness between galaxies. Enormous stations, fleets of ships beyond counting, whole cities floating in the void. So we built this, Marcus continued. While you laughed, we built an ark. While you dismissed our fears, we developed technologies you claimed we were too primitive to understand. While you sat in your ancient comfort, we prepared for the survival of our entire species. He leaned forward, and his eyes were cold with calculation. You want our help now. You want us to return and save the Union that ignored us. You want us to share our technology, our preparations, our refuge. And we will. Hope sparked across the Union, transmitted through countless watching beings. But not as members, Marcus said, his voice hard as steel. Not as junior partners in your ancient organization. Not as children seeking approval from elder species. If humanity returns, we return as leaders. We return as the ones who saw what you could not see. We return as the ones who did what you refused to do. The holographic image showed more of humanity's refuge. Entire planets being constructed from raw materials harvested from dead systems in interdimensional